Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is McKenna, and if you're not, welcome. Hi, how are you? So today I want to do a little bit of a sit down video, and it is going to be all about my fitness journey. I wrote some notes down on my phone because I was honestly like, you guys have asked me for this video. I don't even really know what to talk about. So get a little drinky drink, get a snack, and let's just chat. Okay, so first I want to start off with my background and kind of what I was doing pre-training and everything like that. So I grew up very, very athletic. Ever since I was super little, I was playing sports. I was like 3 years old playing basketball at the YMCA at a town near where I grew up. So ever since I was little, I was always very, very active. Basketball, softball, I did volleyball for a little bit, I did cheerleading for a year. In many softball leagues, I was on a traveling basketball team, like you name it, I was active all growing up. Obviously, during that time, I was very young. I was like 3 years old all the way up until I quit sports when I was like 16, which we'll get into in a second. But I obviously didn't pay attention to food because why would I need to pay attention to food when I was that young and little? So grew up very athletic, never really paid attention to food. I never ate like bad per se. It was just kind of like, you know, whatever was at home, that's what I ate. My family never really ate out a lot. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so we didn't eat out because it just like wasn't even an option. So I always ate at home. I just never, you know, really cared to pay attention to my food. Fast forward to high school. So my stepdad actually got a job transfer. So we moved from Iowa to Nebraska when I was 16, a few months into my junior year of high school. And like I said, I grew up active all throughout my life, so I was always playing sports. However, I moved 4 hours away from my hometown where I grew up, and when I moved out here, I really needed to focus on school, just kind of getting used to everything. It was so new. I've never moved anywhere before. So I quit playing sports. In turn with that, obviously, my activity levels decreased, stress levels increased, and kind of just started eating whenever I want. I moved to Omaha, so it's a little bit of a bigger city, especially bigger than what I grew up, the town I grew up in. So there's a bunch of fast food places I've never heard of before. I was just trying to make friends. I always go to like Dairy Queen right after school, and I would always get like the like chicken finger box, you know, at Dairy Queen. I don't know if they still have that, but anyways, my activity levels decreased, stress increased, food increased because I was trying all these new foods. Again, never had to pay attention to my food, so why would I do that now? That being said, obviously you can see the cycle. Decrease activity levels, increase food, I'm gonna gain a little bit of weight. I didn't necessarily gain a bunch of weight, but I definitely was not how I looked like growing up when I was super active. So obviously a bunch of self-esteem issues kind of came into play. I started to notice it over time, how I just like wasn't really looking the same. I was started to weigh myself, which I never did ever really because I never paid attention to it, because my body never really changed like that to feel like I needed to weigh myself. So gained a little bit of weight, wasn't really happy. In general with life, I wasn't happy, and then also added on top of that a lot of body image issues, just kind of confused as to why my body was changing. With this, I did start doing my first form of exercise aside from sports. I started doing Beachbody workouts in my mom's basement. If you're an OG, then you know that that's what I did. And it's very HIIT style, so like very cardio focused, and I loved it. It was never something that I could stay consistent with though. I was very up and down. I would work out for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I would do the 21-day fix, if you know what that is. It would be like a 3-week thing, and then I would just stop, and then the cycle would start again. So I would work out really hard for like 3 weeks, then I would just stop for like a month, restart it. So it was very like on and off. Exercise just wasn't really something that obviously I could see myself sticking with, and in general it wasn't really something, you know, that I enjoyed, that I wanted to stick with. So it was good for getting me active and getting me moving and everything like that, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to continue doing, or it's something that I like truly enjoyed. So fast forward to 18, this is kind of when the whole Beachbody thing working out at home started happening. My mom had some weights too downstairs, so I would always try to do something with weights, but I was very, very HIIT focused as far as like what my training was like. So continue on through 2018, on and off cycle, and then my mom, my stepdad, we finally got a family membership at a local YMCA. And that is when I remember it's like September 2018, really when I also started posting on Instagram consistently too, was that time frame. But that is when I started to get introduced to weights, had absolutely no idea what I was doing. It was also kind of, I feel like, the start of fitness influencer era, so I would just do whatever workouts I found on Instagram or Pinterest, whatever the case was. But I was getting in the gym and I loved it. I loved it. Again, still at this point, not really focusing on my food. Told myself I was intuitive eating. I never ate bad at all per se, and besides that little time spurt where I was eating out a lot after like high school and stuff, but at this point I was graduating high school. So again, the start of September 2018 is really when I started to get into the weights and doing Instagram workouts, posting on my own Instagram and everything like that. So that is kind of the starting point of like weight training and everything. So fast forward 2019 now at this point, and weight training, I did do a lot of HIIT workouts. Honestly, that's what really grew my Instagram, was posting my HIIT workouts. What a time. What a freaking time in the world that was. So 2019, a little bit of mixture of weight training in the gym, doing a little bit of HIIT workout, just kind of like really enjoying and really getting into a good groove of what my fitness routine was. Again, no really focus on food. Again, I didn't eat bad. I wasn't tracking my food. So that was all kind of 2019. I feel like that is kind of when my Instagram kind of started to pick up a little bit for the very first time, which is super exciting. I was posting my workouts all the time and really just enjoyed going to the gym, and I enjoyed training and what I was doing. 2019 is also when I started going to cosmetology school. So if you've gone to cosmetology school, then you know how time consuming that was. I was in school 40 hours a week. On top of that, I served part-time at a local sports bar and grill, probably like 2 to 3 days a week. So 40 hours in school, was working probably like 10, 15 hours on top of that at a local sports bar, on top of trying to continue growing my Instagram and all of the things. This is when I started to get a little bit more into food, was like the end of 2019. And at that time, I was bringing my lunches to cosmetology school. Everyone was eating out. This is when I really started to like kind of try to shift and be a little bit more in control of my food at this point, like the end of 2019-ish. Fast forward into 2020, what a lovely year that was. And this is when lockdown happened. And you know, with lockdown, I just went back to my root, HIIT workouts. We loved HIIT workouts. They were just fun. I only had one pair of dumbbells, so I was just doing what I could. With that, I wasn't tracking my food at this point. The beginning of 2020, it was still just like more intuitive eating. Wasn't eating bad, but I was being more conscious of what I was putting into my body. But again, couldn't really do anything with weights. Didn't have anything, so I was going on a lot of walks, doing a lot of HIIT workouts, and really just trying to do, you know, what I could, as I'm sure a lot of you guys were just trying to figure out a good routine. At this point too, all of 2019 is really when I got into a groove of going into the gym, and I had a really good routine, and then COVID hit, everything shut down for like 2 months. I couldn't get into a gym, which, I mean, whatever. I was still consistent with what I was doing, but it just was kind of crappy, you know, when you really just got into a good routine and then it just gets taken away from you. So whatever, we dealt with it, went back to our roots, did our HIIT workouts, was being a little bit more conscious of our food. And that's kind of all that beginning of 2020 entailed for me. Now, the end of 2020, this is when things really started to kick into place for me. So at this point, I started working out at 2018. It is now 2020. So I was doing 2 years of basically just trying to get into a good routine with training. Wasn't really focusing on food with the amount that I was eating. And I remember so vividly, I know exactly where I was at. I was in my old apartment. I remember exactly what I was wearing, and I was taking progress pictures, and I was comparing them between, you know, where I started at versus where I'm at now 2 years in, and I just did not see any changes at all. I remember sobbing. I just wasn't seeing any changes. I felt like I was putting in so much work, and I just didn't feel like my physique changed at all in 2 years, and I'm like, it was just so frustrating to see those progress pictures. And now looking back, obviously it was just like, I kind of just like, give me 2 more years, like, hold on girl, we're almost there. And this is when I started my first bulk, and this is when I started tracking my macros. Going into this bulk, this is my first ever bulk, right? And I was like following the KK Fit twins, and I was like sending pictures to like my dad, like, this is what I want to look like, and this is my goal, and blah, 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 blah. And when I started tracking food, I just kind of plugged some numbers into MyFitnessPal, and I remember starting off eating like 2,200 calories, whatever, pretty average for 5'2", 135 pound girl to be eating 2,200 calories for like a starting point. I had no idea what I was doing. I barely knew how to track macros. Obviously I knew some because I've been in like the whole fitness realm for like 2 years at this point, but I have never tracked my macros before. So it was a bunch of trial and error when it first came to tracking my food and really just figuring out, you know, how to adjust serving sizes and how to make sure I'm eating the right amount of protein, carbs, and fats, and this and that. So it was just a bunch of trial and error. And when it comes to bulking, obviously you have a little bit more leniency with your food. You just want to make sure that, you know, if it's your first bulk, you just want to make sure that you're eating. You need to be eating. You need to be eating in a calorie surplus. You need to be eating enough to gain this muscle that the whole bulk is supposed to be, you know, in place for. So the end of 2020 was a pretty stressful time in my personal life. I was loosely tracking my macros, but I was making sure that I was just eating in general, because again, it was a very, very hard time in my personal life, but I stuck to it. I bulked from, and I say bulked because I wasn't tracking my food 100%, but there was more consistency with the amount that I was eating, more than there ever has been beforehand. And during this bulk, I did gain about 10 pounds, which I would say that's pretty good for like my first time ever not really tracking my food, but I could tell in the gym I was getting a lot stronger, so that was cool. I bulked from September 2020 to February 2021 is when my very first cut started. So September, October, November, December, January. It's like 5-ish months of really trying to push food, really trying to put an effort into the gym and everything to build that extra muscle mass. And I was weight training probably like 4 times a week at this point. I did no cardio. I ended my HIIT phase. We were done with the HIIT. We don't like that anymore. We weight trained for about 4 times a week, and that was basically from all of 2020 to the beginning of 2021. And 2021 is when my very first cut phase started. And when you get done with the bulking phase, you feel like, oh my God, what did I just do to myself? Am I gonna be able to lose fat? Am I gonna be able to get all of this weight off? Why did I just, you know, put all this weight on myself on purpose? Like, why did I do this to myself? Like, if you've gone through a bulk, then you more than likely have had those thoughts. And even like this past time too, like I still thought about that, because it's like, it's hard to see yourself at a heavier weight knowing that you purposely put yourself there. Beginning of 2021 in February is when my very first cut started. So this is when macro tracking every single day, probably like 6 days a week. I was tracking my food. I always gave myself a free day off of tracking just so I didn't get too number focused with it all. Not that I ever really did, but it's just nice to have a little bit of leniency that way. I jumped back into tracking my food. I was so much more consistent with my macros, and holy crap, I fell in love with the bulking and cutting process, and it is just the most rewarding thing ever. During this cut, I lost about 10 to 15-ish pounds. I think the highest in my bulk that I weighed was like 140, 142-ish, and the lowest in my cut was around like 127. I have not seen 127 on the scale probably since I was like in 6th grade. So this cut was like, wow. It was like so amazing to be able to like know that I did this myself and I transformed my body myself. And it was a good time. I loved all of 2021. It was just great. It was great. Again, still focusing on weight training. Obviously added in some cardio for my cut and everything, but nothing like crazy. I think I was doing like 3 30-minute sessions at the most for like my very first cut. And yeah, I lost about 10 to 15 pounds, and it was really. So going into fall time of 2021, I wanted to start another building phase because at the end of my cut, I just didn't, again, I wanted to be bigger, like as far as like muscle mass and density. I wanted to have more muscle on because I've never seen myself actually transform within my physique, you know, from 2018 to 2020. I never really got to see what I looked like at a smaller point. So at the end of that cut, I wanted to go through another building phase because I just wanted more muscle mass. Hi, I love you. Thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you. So the fall of 2021, I started another building phase. And during this building phase, I was in a calorie surplus for about a year. So double the amount of time that I was in a surplus the very first time that I did a bulk. And during this time, I really had a focus on powerlifting. I really love training for strength for my squat and bench primarily. I dabbled in deadlifts a little bit. It's just like deadlifting has never been my favorite thing. I'm not built for it at all. My arms are not long enough to be good at deadlifting, but I'm pretty good at bench. Anyways, at this point, fall of 2021 up until, I want to say I kind of ended powerlifting like May of 2022. And I was really, really focused on powerlifting, gaining strength. Obviously, I still had some bodybuilding type of styles for like my accessories and everything like that. So really just focusing on getting stronger, building a lot more muscle mass, and I sure did that. I worked my food up to around 3,000 calories towards the end of my bulk, and it was insane. It was crazy. I could not believe I was eating that much food, but it did what it needed to do, and that's all there is to it. So I was tracking my macros again, went through a building phase from August of 2021 to, I was in a surplus until around probably like June or July of 2022. So almost around like 10, 11 months of being in a calorie surplus, really just focusing on building muscle mass and taking my time in my bulking phase too, because you can't rush growing muscle because you can, especially as women, it takes a lot more time to put on muscle mass because we don't have as much testosterone as men do. So yeah, I really took my time this time around because I wanted to make it worth it, you know? So during this bulk, I gained, the highest I weighed in this bulk was 155. I don't know how much weight I actually gained from the very beginning of the bulking phase to where I ended it up, but I ended the bulk around 155. I have never weighed that much ever in my life, and I never want to weigh that much ever again in my life. Not saying that that's a lot, but for me, that's a lot. Personally, you know, we all hold weight differently. We all look differently, a different sort of weight, and personally, I just felt not like McKenna whatsoever. And I worked my food up too high. I regretted doing that because it made this upcoming cut phase a lot harder, and it took a lot longer to decrease body fat because I had a lot more on me than I did the first go around with like bulking and cutting and everything. So looking back, I wish I would have stopped increasing my food as high as I did. Still wanted to be in a surplus, but I kind of just took it a little bit too far. I gained way too much body fat, and I just didn't need to do that. So I started my deficit phase in August of 2022, and it was a whole lot of trusting the process, right? It was just like, I just didn't recognize myself. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, I just didn't feel like McKenna, and it was a whole lot of trusting the process, this cutting phase. It was just like, you know what your body's supposed to be doing. You've done this before. It's just gonna take a little bit more time and a lot more patience. So it was hard to see the end goal of this bulking and cutting phase of like the second round This one was probably my most rewarding thing I've ever done before in my life. I lost 25 pounds and it was hard. It was hard to lose the 25 pounds. It was so rewarding because I stuck to protocols even when it didn't feel like I was changing anything physique-wise. Stuck to what I knew what I needed to do, and I did it. I executed everything day in, day out, and it took me August, September, October, November, December, 5 months to lose 25 pounds, and I was grinding for it. End of my bulk, like I said, I weighed around like 155. The end of this cut, my lowest was 131. And it's just, whoo! It was a long 5 months, let me tell you. And during that time too, I had a lot of personal stuff going on. I was going through a breakup that no one on Instagram, TikTok, no one knew about besides my close personal friends. And obviously now everyone knows because I've chatted about it at this point. It's been December, January, February. It's been about 3 months since we officially, you know, cut things off, whatever, but it kind of started happening back in October. So in the middle of this cut, I was going through a breakup that I was not expecting to go through at all. So that was a lot to handle, on top of not really feeling like myself, not having the most confidence ever in the whole world, and just like it was a lot. It was really, really hard to stick through this cut, but I did it, and I'm so proud that I did. And now at this point, February 2023, I am eating around my maintenance calories right now, having a little bit more leniency with my food, roughly around like 2,400 calories right now, and I'm maintaining weight about 132, 133-ish. And I'm feeling really good. I really like being at maintenance because my cutting phase, this past cutting phase, took a lot out of me mentally. It truly did, because it was really, really hard. And on going through another mini little cut for, girl, what? You wanna come here? Okay. So I do plan on going through another cut, nothing like super intense, but I want to start one probably around like April. Just for summertime, I just want to feel a little bit more, you know, tighter and firm with how I'm looking, because obviously I'm going to be outside more, and I just want to, not that I don't look good and feel good right now, but I just want to more tighter and just like more defined and toned and whatever you want to call it. Just a personal goal of mine, confident when I'm, you know, in a little bikini. So yeah, that has been my fitness journey. It's been about 4.5 years now at this point, from start to finish, and it's been a wild ride, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of feeling all the feels. And if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys have any questions about anything, please drop them down below. I will link my Instagram, socials, everything like that down in the description. But we are accepting one-on-one clients for springtime, summertime. So if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I will also link the application link down below. But if you guys have any other questions, please just drop them down. See you guys in the next video. Bye.